Well, I am really happy to introduce my lovely friend to everyone at Arise Humanity and also on Soul Family on Rumble. And we have today our beautiful guest, Lisa Brough. And Lisa lives near me in the area of near Redcliffe. You're in Woody Point, aren't you?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
And it's a really beautiful place to live. But aside from that, Lisa has wonderful gifts that she's going to share with everyone today. She's a holistic biomagnetist and a mentor, and she's one of the leading global lights, which of course she's not going to share, but I will, in the area of biomagnetism. And so we're very lucky to have her here today to talk with us about a little bit about her background and about why biomagnetism is a brilliant way to assist your own health, your healing journey, and helping you be your very best at this time. So big welcome, Lisa. Lovely to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you, Medina. It's a wonderful welcome.
And I'd love to chat with you first of all about a little bit about your background and why you're interested in holistic health, alternative health, and healing.
Yeah, but I do have an interesting sort of story to tell, and I think we all do. Like something always brings us to learning something that, we share with the world.
Yes.
Um, I would say I was probably at first shaped by the experience of having seen my mother go through cancer as a child.
Right.
So in those high school years, she had breast cancer. She went very medical. It was caught early, she had great doctors, she had the very best, yet it wasn't enough.
Right.
In that, that it was the best case scenario. You catch it early and you do the treatments correctly and you do all the right things. But, 5 years later it returned and, that was it. She
Sorry.
did have a couple of alternative books floating around the house that people had shared with her. About people that have beaten cancer with mind power or perhaps herbs. And, I was slightly aware of these things existing, but I didn't
Well,
really know that
obviously
much
not as
about them.
prevalent back then, as they are now. So there wouldn't be as much information by a long shot then.
And then I went off to university. I was really interested in physics and anything to do with engineering and design, sciences, just loved them all. So, I was not the typical person that would go into the alternative world. But as I found out later on, metaphysics is really just physics that hasn't been scientifically expanded enough yet that we totally understand it. It's basically the same thing. It's just a new science, and there's a lot of early research that has been done to understand certain phenomena, especially when it comes to consciousness and what its effect is on the hard reality around us about, from the quantum right through to, psychology and right through to health. So, it's just an early emerging science, and it will all come together. The physics and the metaphysics will all come together at some stage.
Yes.
And with that also comes the spirituality. Yeah, science will describe those things in time as well.
Totally. With your mother's journey, and that obviously has a huge impact on you. May I ask what was the age when she did transition?
She was 49. Yeah, so it was way too young, as you can imagine, someone that didn't have any health conditions at all.
Yes.
And was otherwise healthy and fit and
Yeah.
just came out of the blue.
Wow.
But these days I do understand that it's more than just your lifestyle.
Yes.
That there can be emotional conflicts, like emotions we haven't been able to resolve that change our physiology and make it weaker in some way so that disease can develop. So that is part of what I do with the holistic biomagnetism.
So what did you do on your journey to biomagnetism? Did you do, I know that you were in initially did Reiki, like myself. We both followed the initial Reiki journey.
Yep.
And then what did you do after that to get to where you are now?
Well, initially the Reiki was very much a side interest. I was a personal trainer at the time, and I was helping people with their rehabilitation or their body fat loss or whatever it was they were trying to achieve. I was very much interested in nutrition and mindset. So I was more of a holistic personal trainer because I knew all the different elements of who we are were important. It wasn't just the physical. So I always had that awareness that we needed the right mindset. We needed to have the right tools, and we needed some practical stuff as well, which is, how to read labels, how to choose correct food for your body and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
So like I was always looking at all the complexity and all the ways that we need help as a human. But basically what brought me into biomagnetism was my own search that I developed my first medical condition myself, which was a low functioning thyroid. So
Which is
if
quite common,
anyone's,
isn't it, with people?
yeah, it is so common, and we can probably all relate to it. Perhaps we've all had an experience like that and it was fleeting and it didn't last. But if it's like that all the time, that it doesn't matter what you do, you gain weight, you have low energy. It was literally this experience of getting through the day, a little bit of extra coffee helped, a little bit of extra food helped to actually help me to get through the day, because I've got 3 small children to look after. You don't get time off to heal.
No.
Adequate time off to heal, which it might have been 3 months of rest.
And a single
But
mum, so you had to
yeah,
a lot of responsibilities there. Yeah.
there's no way that could happen. So I'd done a bunch of work with Bowen therapy, with NES Health, which is a type of, infoceutical, they call it. It's a type of modern homeopathy. None of these things that I did actually made any difference.
Sure.
So I'd seen a naturopath as well, and I corrected my iodine status because it was low. So I boosted up my iodine and my selenium, and I stopped gluten and all those things that normally work that they didn't really do much at all. That had been about 5 months, and I just got about 20% better. So it was a long road. Not saying those things don't work. It just would have been a long, slow road.
And isn't
So I
it
was still
interesting
looking.
too that often the thing that we find that really works for us is like our divine soul mission to share with others. And
Yeah.
I love how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's often how it goes. And being part of like one of these online communities at the time, the one that I read the most was a Facebook group called the Energy Medicine Exchange. I don't know if you're part of that one, but
No, I don't know that one.
yeah, it's run by an energy medicine practitioner and researcher called Thornton Streeter. So he's a Pommy, I think. It's from the UK. And it was a massive group, like 45,000 people. It's still going if you want to jump in there. But there was a discussion, and somebody mentioned, why don't you use biomagnetism? That is good for that thing. I can't even remember what the thing was that was being discussed.
Yeah.
And my mind said, oh, what is that? I better Google it. And I landed on a website called Biomagnetism USA, which is the website of a practitioner in California. And she was holding trainings, and she was bringing Dr. Goyes, who was the creator of the system. She was bringing him up from Mexico to California to teach people. I'm reading about what it works on and how it assists the body. And it was different. It was completely different paradigm to things like energy healing. It was different to acupuncture. It was different paradigm. And what it does is you place magnets on the body to change the internal pH directly.
Right.
Not indirectly through herbs or foods or diet, but directly and immediately. And what happens is there'll be these 2 spots in the body that are out of balance simultaneously. One spot's too alkaline and one spot's too acidic. So that's the phenomenon we're looking for and we're fixing, which allows the body to go back to normal function once you've finished neutralizing it all.
Does it take more than one session to get that balance back in, or does it depend on the chronicness of the person, of the condition?
Yeah, it There's sometimes you can be very surprised. I would say there's always going to be a small percentage of people who seem to have something miraculous happen and they only need one session. But that's like anything, you know, if the stars align and if this was the final thing that needed to happen,
Yeah.
then that person might experience that the biomagnetic pairs, getting them sorted, getting them neutralized is the final thing they needed to restore their health. Other people have got more complexity.
Mm.
And sometimes if it's the problem's more chronic and been there longer, you end up with more complexity, but not always. So it's a hard question to answer. Some people do need to have 10,
Yeah.
12 sessions.
Yes.
Other people just one or two.
I've got to ask, how can you tell that the person needs more, like say they've had 3 or 4 sessions, how do you know that they're not quite balanced in their pH yet? Is there a specific test that you do, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole process of placing the magnets in the body, we have a step that comes before that, and we call it scanning. So basically, we grab a magnet. These magnets are covered. We've got the positive pole we cover with red, the negative pole we cover with black. So we know what we're doing. We use that negative pole to place on all these different placements all over the body. So you've got everywhere on the head, the back, the front, the arms, the legs, but that's all on the surface of the body and over the clothing. So a person just lies still on the massage bed and we move the magnet around to check every spot that could possibly be out of balance. And when we hit a spot that's too alkaline, this really cool thing happens. And it looks very much like kinesiology, but it's a unique type that is unique to biomagnetism. So when a magnetic field comes into contact with a tissue that's too alkaline, the entire right side of the body contracts just a little bit. Some people can feel it happening, but most people it's very subtle and they don't really notice it. But what I then do is I place the magnet. So I'm checking, you know, the pituitary gland here. Then I'll go to the feet. I'll lift the feet up, push them together. And if the right side of the body is contracted, I can see that the legs are no longer balanced, like the right leg is shorter. So that contraction could mean about between 1 centimeter and 4 centimeters difference in the legs.
Wow,
So
that's
it's
amazing.
quite obvious when you know how to do it. So.
Gosh, that's amazing. So really your body's communicating to you the whole time through this system and responding. And how quickly does it tend to respond to things with biomagnetism? I know it's going to be a hard question to answer because it depends on the person, but how responsive? Because I find with bodies that they are such intelligent and amazing sort of feedback systems that often these things can happen quite quickly. Like we're sensitive and can have a bigger impact quite quickly.
Well, changing the pH in those tissues is quite quick. So where we are in Brisbane area, it's 16 minutes. So after the magnet being in place for 16 minutes, the pH in that tissue is now normalized. And that's quite a stable thing. It doesn't immediately come back. It's usually gone for good, unless you experience another problem that recreates it from scratch. So, and the things that create these biomagnetic pairs are usually involve microbes, exposure to microbes, or sometimes the body actually encourages microbes to help flourish in the body because they're trying to fix something. So the whole study of biomagnetism brings in a whole lot of understanding or a different understanding of how we heal. And that getting a cold, getting a cough, it feels pretty rough to us. We don't like it, but that's an intelligent response our body is allowing to go on in the body, that the body needs the cold to cleanse some toxicity out of the lung. There's a reason for it, or
Yes.
it's a way to mitigate emotional suffering.
Right.
But it comes with a physical manifestation as well that's not so nice.
So basically, isn't it true to say that most things boil down to emotional sort of dysfunction or emotional issues that have not been resolved. And then it translates into the physical vehicle.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, and when we do biomagnetism by placing the magnet on the body to find the pH imbalances, when we do the treatments that way, it doesn't really look at the emotions. If you change your physiology, you'll often feel better emotionally by chance.
Mm-hmm.
If the organs are all nice and clear again, then whatever emotion went with that organ is lifted. But when we learn advanced biomagnetism, we weave in some other tools. So we work in this way to find emotional conflict, which comes from the work of Dr. Greer Hammer. So he was that German doctor who discovered this link between the brain and emotion, and also the physical manifestation of tumors. And it's a huge body of work, and it's very strongly correlated. You have an emotional event and you're not dealing with that emotion very well, and you're still stuck in that emotion. Then you'll have a stress ring that appears in the brain that is visible on an MRI. And also, you've also got the part of the brain, the body that relates to that part of the brain that has the stress ring is now developing a disease. So you've got something happening up here, brain level, you've got something happening in the organ or somewhere else in the body.
Yes.
And it all started because of the emotional experience you're going through.
That reminds me of my best friend who she started getting numb in her, it was her foot, one side of the body, and it was a numbness, and it continued for quite a while. And then it was discovered that she had a brain tumor. And then she ended up having chemotherapy and passing from that because, yes, the effects of all that. So very, very interesting. With biomagnetism, how long has it been around for? Is it relatively new?
Well, it's quite new in Australia.
Mm.
When I wanted to learn the magnets, there was no one doing it here.
Mm.
So I grabbed a girlfriend and we went, and we were the first in Australia. That was 2014. But at the time, I don't know how long it's been utilized outside of Dr. Goy's clinic. So Dr. Goy's was the Mexican doctor who created and developed the system of finding and neutralizing the biomagnetic pairs. But at some point, a few years into his research, he started teaching other doctors. So it came out of the need to actually treat medical conditions, usually infections.
Right.
And so he was able to study, huge amounts of people and check their body all over and find where the body is out of balance. And he came up with this catalogue of where to put the magnet for every type of infection. And it got a bit bigger and bigger. And there's pairs for leukemia, there's pairs for blood pressure. So things that aren't related to microbes as well. And so there's a big map, a huge body of work now. And it was about a 30-year process from discovery through to what it's like at the moment.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Dr. Goyes has sadly passed away 2 years ago.
Okay. And you've continued his work because you've not only practicing this with a lot of clients, but you also are writing a manual that didn't actually exist for biomagnetism so that people can really follow through a manual or the processes as well. So that's really clever. When did you start writing the manual and how's that going?
Well, the manual is it's not actually a manual. I call it a reference guide. It's a little
Oh, okay.
bit, it's for people that already know how to do the treatment.
Mhm.
We do run courses for people to learn to do the treatment because like learning the process correctly and exactly like where these points on the body actually are, they're actually quite small points. So you've got to get them right. They're about 0.5 centimeter across.
Right.
And so learning to do the process we do in a hands-on practical workshop to do the certification course.
Yes.
But once you know the basics, there's quite a bit to learn to become an advanced biomagnetist. So I've written a reference guide for the girls that I help. It is open to men as well. I'm just talking about the ladies that I mentor.
Yep.
Just all happen to be ladies at the moment. There are plenty of male biomagnetists, especially in Mexico.
Mhm.
and the USA. There's a lot in the USA now, Europe as well.
Mhm.
But, I don't know why, but the healing arts do attract a higher
Really?
percentage of women.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
we're
true.
just a natural interest that,
Mm.
shows up more so on the feminine side.
Yes, yes. Wow. So it's amazing the work you're doing. It is trailblazing then in Australia because you were the first, as you mentioned, with this. The funny thing is, the synchronicities of life, because when I lived in Tweed Heads before I lived in Redcliffe, I've got a lovely friend there, and I went round to visit her often. We'd have cuppas and things, and she put me on the Biomagnetist one time because she does it herself. And then she learned it from you. And then I met you when I came to Redcliffe through someone else, wasn't even through her. So that sort of synchronistic thing of it all coming back to the same thing is fascinating. Maybe what we could do too, I'll just throw it by you, is maybe I could have a session with you again, because that was a while ago and I can't quite remember what happened. But if I have a session and then maybe I could film some of it, or I could sort of report back how I'm feeling, that sort of thing, and then put it on my channel so people can have a follow-up of a bit more information about it. Would that be something that we could do maybe?
Oh yeah, that sounds like fun.
Oh, cool.
To be
Excellent.
honest, I haven't gone to the trouble of filming a session and having someone report on it before. But
Yes.
it's a great way for people to understand really what goes on.
What's happening?
But
Yeah,
yeah, it's a great
absolutely.
idea.
I'd love to do that because it is so relatively new in Australia, and that you're the sort of major sort of person that's bringing it through. It's a great way, I think, to get it out even more to people and get them to sort of understand how it works. So, wow, that's amazing. And could you give me an example of maybe one of the best case studies you've had of one of your clients that you're able to share of what happened with them with the biomagnets?
Hmm.
Are you able to share anything like that?
Yeah, that there's so many stories. And
Yes.
biomagnetism is the sort of treatment that can be applied to absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And so it can be applied to depression, anxiety, children's behavior, digestive issues, hormonal imbalance, serious illness like cancer, fatigue-based stuff like, chronic fatigue. So I think the ones that I like the best are the ones that around people getting their life back because of fatigue.
Sure. And chronic
Because,
fatigue is a huge thing, I've got to say. I know so many healers and light workers who have said that they have experienced in their life chronic fatigue. And I just think if you're a sensitive light worker or healer, you often find the density of this 3D reality very challenging, especially as you go through life and there's all these challenges we have to deal with and everything,
yeah,
that it just impacts their energy because they're very sensitive and they pick up energy very easily. And so many of them have had this chronic fatigue.
yeah,
Fascinating.
and yeah, the susceptibility to toxins.
Yes.
So, people who are perhaps what we would call the crystal children,
Mm.
that I know there's different ways to describe it, but people that, they are a bit otherworldly because their soul has spent lifetimes elsewhere. The way
Yes.
that soul expresses itself through a human, through a 3D human,
Mm.
it can end up having some sensitivities to, or being a poor detoxifier, or being more emotionally sensitive. Like it can express itself in a very physical way. It gets
Can I say
reflected.
too, I went through a very challenging divorce process with the ex being I'm not in a good space. And the time after that, I was just so tired for quite a long time. It was chronic fatigue, really, because it was a stress response to going through a very difficult situation. And so, yeah, I'm sure most people could relate to that when they just go through a really challenging, perhaps traumatic event, in their life.
Yeah, yeah. I can share just one little that we've got the big stuff. So when it comes to things like, chronic fatigue or any sort of complex disease, it generally works really well. It's we have a high percentage success, so we generally expect success. But if you think about smaller everyday things, I remember seeing a client who was around 3 to 4 months pregnant with twins, terrible morning sickness.
Yeah.
Imagine being able just to lift that away in 2 treatments, and it never came back for the whole pregnancy.
Wow. Wow.
It's like the impact of that on someone who already has other children
That is
is
huge.
huge.
And the body, when it's out of balance, like with its pHD and out more sort of acidic than alkaline, is the perfect conditions, of course, for the big, C word, cancer, which many people are now talking about the connection between parasites and cancer too. But anyway, so what that's another field again. But
Oh no, it's actually what we do.
oh, okay. Is the
So,
microbes, does that cover parasites? Is that the same sort of
yes.
thing? Right.
So we cover all the microbes, and
Yeah.
Dr. Goy's theory of biomagnetism is most tumors don't involve parasites.
Right.
All end stage tumors do, though. So it's another element that comes in later in the process, but not at the start.
Right. So the body's vulnerable and then it has sort of the lack of immunity, and then these things come in.
Yeah, well, parasites are here to help us. They're a lot like fungi in that when the body is breaking down and there's dead tissue around, they eat it up.
Right.
They eat the decaying tissue,
Right.
just like the mushrooms on a dead log in the forest.
Sure.
That these two microbes, they have a place in our body.
Mhm.
So correlation not doesn't correlation doesn't mean it's what caused it to start with. If it's there when the tissue is breaking down, it can be a result of something else, but it wasn't the reason that the tumor started.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, people can have parasite issues and then develop a cancer, but they were two separate issues and they end up complicating each other.
Right.
But the tumoral genesis, we have a particular spot in the body that gets out of balance with the pH. And then there'll be 3 bacteria and a virus, and then one more very specific bacteria that's common to all people with cancer, and it's a mycobacterium. But all those other elements will actually be different in everyone, like where the pH balance that creates the tumor genesis to start with, where that is located might be different for everyone.
Mhm.
Those 3 bacteria will be different types for everyone.
Yes.
That one virus will be different types for everyone. And
Yes.
there's only one element in there that is common in all cases. So biomagnetism has its own understanding or theory,
Sure. Sure. Yes.
and it seems to hold true. The fungus and the parasite, they're definitely involved in tumors that have been there longer or whenever there's breaking down tissue. They're definitely part of it,
Yes. Yes.
but they're not required. They're not actually needed to start a cancer.
Right. Right. And I remember that you were saying, Lisa, that when you use the biomagnets yourself, you've been able to really support your own journey as well. So tell us from your personal experience how it's impacted you as well.
Yeah, well, when I came home from training, well, obviously fixing the thyroid condition.
Mhm.
So it took 3 treatments.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't a lot of work because I'd already got my nutritional deficiency under taken care of, and it didn't need much more to go to correct it. And what happened was on my 3rd treatment, I didn't feel anything after the first or the second, but after the third one, there was enough things, neutralized in the body that my thyroid just picked right up. And so what that looked like was I could keep my eyes open past 7 p.m.
Right.
and I didn't feel cold. I didn't have numb feet in winter.
Right. Huge stuff. Yeah.
And when I actually went to deliberately lose the excess weight, which was 26 kilograms, quite a bit on a little person,
Yeah.
when I, did some diet and exercise and actually attempted to lose the weight, well, that calorie deficit now actually did something, and I could easily lose a kilogram a week. Whereas before the thyroid having its balance, I could have that calorie deficit for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and would not drop a gram of weight. It was crazy.
Ah,
My body just wasn't working properly.
right. Yes.
And so that was 10 years ago.
And might I say too, when I've seen photos of you from 10 years ago now, you look much younger now than you did 10 years ago.
Yeah, having a bit of weight does seem to age you sometimes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in more recent years,
yeah, yeah.
all those symptoms that come with menopause.
Mhm.
So I had quite a few of them, not all of them, but I had quite a few of them.
Yeah.
You know, the insomnia and the hot flashes in particular.
Yes,
So I was able to use the magnets and some herbs.
fantastic.
So for example, the hot flashes, for example, um, I was so exhausted. I didn't have the brain space or the spoons to be able to do a treatment on myself.
Yes.
So I grabbed some herbs. But then when the next one came along, then the next wave of different experience that goes with menopause, then I was able to do a couple of treatments with the magnets. And each time a new symptom would come up, I've moved through it.
Fantastic.
And so now I have, maybe 5% of the, just there's the tiniest smidgen of symptoms left, which is not a bother in the
Sure.
scheme of things.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you are super busy because you obviously still got the 3 kids there, and you're writing the reference guide, and then you've got clients, and then everything
Yeah.
else that you're doing. So
I've also got, this is the book from our conference. So for the last, this year will be the third one, but we hold a Zoom conference for biomagnetism. So
right.
it's a professional conference.
Uh-huh.
Each profession has its yearly conference, but we didn't have one in English. Mexico has one. And a girlfriend and I got together and we decided to create one.
Mhm.
And it went down, it was absolutely fantastic. Last year and the year before, everyone was so appreciative. We even had people who were perhaps a client or they were health practitioners but didn't even know biomagnetism. They were able to come in and learn something and get inspired as well.
Fantastic.
So we're doing that in November.
Great. Oh,
We're
good.
running courses, we're doing heaps of things. So
Fantastic. Well, I'll have all your information below to contact Lisa. And you've also got a Facebook group as well that you're running. So I
yeah,
can leave the link for that below as well. And so there's different, if anyone is inspired by, this wonderful work today, there's a variety of things that you can follow up with Lisa, which is great. And as we mentioned, you're in Brisbane if people want a session as well. So is there anything else that you would like to share, perhaps about biomagnetism in context with the current conditions that we're living through on the planet? We're going through this huge transition in terms of our consciousness, our spirituality, our souls,
yeah.
the whole thing is huge, and we can all feel it. So how does biomagnetism help people in the context of what we're currently experiencing on the planet?
Well, I can answer this from multiple different layers because what we do is we treat polarity within the body.
Yes,
Where we've split ourselves into two opposing forces. We've got two poles of the magnets and we've got 2 points that are out of balance and we're neutralizing them.
yes.
What's going on in the planet is, divide and conquer. It's polarity and everything. This is just all part of change. And because we're going through such intensive change, everything gets shaken up. And so we can examine everything from each side. We have to polarize to create conflict, to understand what's right and wrong, what needs to go, what can stay.
So therefore, if you're balancing the polarization in your physical vehicle, then you would imagine translate into the ability to balance the conflict and polarization on a global level. Would that be correct?
Possibly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
possibly. It's
yeah,
all connected.
yeah,
But
exactly.
the
So you're balancing it
distress
within
that,
yourself, and then you have the ability to balance it with your energy planetarily. Like if everyone was able to do it, that's amazing. I just
but
sort of love
we're
that.
no help to anyone if we're ill, are we?
No, no.
So we've got to take care of our physical, we're going to take care of our emotional, And if we can process and come back to balance on the mental and emotional and the physical, we're going to be sturdy enough to get through all this shake up that we're going through and all the stress that comes with it.
Yes. I've got to ask too, you know how people talk about, and it may not be related at all, but people talk about the polar shift that could happen, where the magnetic and north and south sort of shift and everything shifts. How would that impact us at that cellular level with the way that the magnets work and everything?
It is, no one knows. No one
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
This is a theory. It
Yeah.
does sound pretty cataclysmic
Yeah.
on a physical level for the Earth.
Yeah.
But we are connected to the grid of the Earth. Like our magnetic field is connected. We're immersed in the magnetic field of the Earth. So we're a little organism within another organism.
Yes.
Whatever happens to the mother will happen to us. So
Yes.
I really hope it does not happen.
Do you, when you balance yourself in a biomagnetic way and you get the polarities all balanced and the pH all balanced, does that mean that you're able to reach all aspects of a sort of like perfect health?
Well, that would depend on another couple of factors
Mm-hmm.
that working with so many different people over the years, I've learnt that the small percentage of people that don't respond or don't respond enough, they have what I call a block to healing.
Right.
And there's so many blocks to healing, and sometimes it's something very physical, like a hidden dental infection that keeps the body out of balance no matter what you do, because it's pretty powerful.
Yes.
And that it might not show up. It might not be addressed one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
We can help with the magnets, but sometimes it's not strong enough to show up because it's a secondary layer, or sometimes the person doesn't even know, so I'm not even checking.
Mm-hmm.
So the another block to healing is will.
Yes.
You've got to really want it. And if
Yes.
part of you doesn't and you're not fully aligned to wanting to be well, then you'll sabotage. Either
Yes, because
you'll take a step forward, then a
you
step back. There's that element of will sometimes.
yes, yes.
So it's, humans are complicated. And I
Mm.
keep learning all this from working with so many people, is
Yeah.
all these different elements involved in being well and staying well.
Yes.
Whenever we're exposed to something new, it might highlight something deeper.
Sure.
So, for example, when the whole world experienced COVID,
Mm-hmm.
the virus,
Mm.
we're allowed to say that now, it's fantastic.
I think so. I'm not 100% with you too, but anyway.
So
I
the
never
only,
know. Oh, what's going to happen? But go ahead.
but what happened that something can only become an epidemic or a pandemic if large amounts of people are susceptible to it at the same time.
Mhm.
And the thing that makes us susceptible to the coronavirus is territorial conflict. So when our territory is our ideology, it can be our property, it can be our country. And when there's conflict around our territory, and we're going through that as a society or within a family or, personally, societally, in your town, and then globally as well, all the different levels that we're going through that, then our body is susceptible to that virus because they're an energetic match.
Right.
And so is there any surprise that there's escalation of war at the same time as
Yes.
you're experiencing the COVID?
Because we know the dark, that's their playbook, isn't it? It's to divide and conquer through, racial differences, through gender differences, through all the ways that they're trying to create division. And then that division can then escalate and then create these physical conditions in the body that,
Yeah.
yeah. Emotionally, like if people are unable to address something emotionally, perhaps there's a block, but they don't want to deal with, that would be another thing that would perhaps interrupt or interfere with the full process of perfect healing through biomagnetism as well, which is the
Yeah.
same for any holistic modality. It's the same if they've got that mindset.
Yeah, and we do, as while we're at the process of putting magnets on the body where they're needed, we're actually asking the body, well, what's the emotion behind that microbe? Or what emotion is causing that? And we'll detect that through muscle testing or that leg shortening that we use usually. And so we can find out what emotional conflict happened at what age. Sometimes we know who's involved. But whether or not we actually remember the event, it doesn't matter. We can still release it by feeding it back to the brain. As soon as we admit it out loud and we say, I feel frustrated because of what happened when I was 3 years old that I never got over. Like if you say that out loud and in that deep, relaxed state that we get in when we do magnet work, it actually dissolves that emotional conflict. So we have a process we take you through to find and release any of those trapped emotions or conflicted emotions. Sometimes they're a complex of different things all bundled together.
Yes.
Like one thing supports another thing and that supports another thing. It can go on a long time
Yeah.
sometimes,
Layers. Yes.
but we
Yeah.
can find all that and release it.
Fantastic. Well, it's brilliant what you're doing. I think it's really wonderful. And I love how it's so holistic and, you don't have to take anything, but it's impacting you in the way like you are, when you look at, medicine and big pharma. I like to take the P off that word, but anyway, when you look at the way that deals with things, and it always is addressing symptoms, not getting to the core, and then there's all the side effects and things. These ways are so superior to work with our health, and the more and more that people do these types of practices, the more that we're going to become a much healthier society. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I know that you work very intuitively as well, which is fantastic. You're quite tuned in, on that sort of psychic level, and that is also really powerful with what you're doing. So I'm going to tell people to stay tuned. We're going to do another video on this and share with you the results of what happens, and show a bit more of how it works. And if you've got any questions or comments for Lisa, please leave them below, because I can address them in the next video as well. Maybe you've got a question about something you'd like to ask. And if you're in any way drawn to this work, please share this video with other people, and please follow up contacting Lisa and perhaps even being part of the amazing conference that's coming up in November, if that calls to you. So thank you so much, Lisa. Was there anything that you, perhaps a little gem that you'd like to share just as we finish the video about, something that's helpful for people to hear at this time as we finish?
I think because it came out of my mouth before, my intuition usually is, more channeling.
Yes.
That I just want to remind people of our ability to use our will to direct our life. So everybody has willpower. Some people are using their will and applying it to not using their power. It's what are you applying it to?
Yes.
Are you applying it to avoidance? Are you applying it to actually embracing your power? What are you using your will for?
Yes.
And we think about willpower when it comes to exercise or something like that. So we've all been there. Oh, I don't feel like I've got the willpower to do all that.
Mhm.
We might feel that at times, but we've actually got will, but we're using it to say no to exercise. That is our will.
Right.
It's how we direct and apply our energy.
Right.
And so I
I
want to
get you.
remind everyone that we've actually got it. We're not missing our will. We
But
all
we're
have
but
it.
perhaps using it counterproductively.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
whatever you want to change, whatever you want to improve, whatever goal you want to achieve, or even if it's just a matter of, I just want to be a little bit healthier.
Mhm.
It's, well, what are you going to do? Well, how are you going to apply your energy? Because you do have it. Everybody has it. We're
Yes.
just putting the energy into avoiding doing something or pretending that we have, sort of suppressing ourselves in some way, pretending we don't have willpower. But the thing that we're not doing will be something we're doing instead, and that's where we're applying our will.
Right. Fascinating. Yes, people probably don't look at willpower in that way. They think of it as only a positive thing, but you can actually, like you're just saying, use your will in a way that's not serving your highest good.
Yeah, it's an action. It's not a quality you have or are missing.
Right.
Everybody's got it.
Yeah,
It's just, well, you've got to put it into action
sure.
to the thing
And
you
it's
want
all
to.
about
Yeah.
mindfulness, isn't it? Sort of being self-aware and being mindful and that sort of thing, which, is a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's why you have a practitioner as well, I guess, because they can help you to be aware that you're not being as mindful as you need to
Yeah, that's it.
be.
They definitely help you problem solve and come up with a great path forward. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Fantastic to chat with you. I love the way you're so deeply reflective and thoughtful in your way that you communicate with everything. And I know we could chat about lots more. So look forward to sharing with everyone that's watching part 2, which will be a bit more on the biomagnetism. Please leave your comments or questions below, and have a beautiful day. Lisa, what's left? And we'll see you again soon.
yeah, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Thank you.
Medina.
Pleasure.
It's been lovely.
Bye.